Let's talk about some of the negative effects that some chemicals can have. This is not to demonize chemicals and all that. This is just some terms I see tossed around on the internet quite a lot that people use interchangeably, but they do not mean the same thing. The first one is a mutagen. So mutagens are classified as anything that causes changes in the DNA sequence, also known as a mutation. Now, mutagens are chemicals that cause these changes, and now mutations are not necessarily bad. In fact, almost all mutations have absolutely no effect. They just change the DNA sequence without actually changing the protein that it codes for. So mutagens in terms of chemicals are substances that just cause changes in the DNA. Most of the time it is harmless. Sometimes it can have negative effects, like all mutations can have. The next one that I hear often interchanged with mutagen is carcinogen. Now, carcinogen is any substance that causes cancer or may potentially cause cancer. Now, cancer is classed as an uncontrolled growth of cells, almost always due to a mutation. So most, but not all, carcinogens are also mutagens, but not all mutagens, are carcinogens. So just because it causes a change in your DNA does not mean that it will necessarily cause cancer. And similarly, not all things that cause cancer are mutagens. There are some carcinogens that don't work by changing your DNA. They instead work by just enhancing cell growth without altering the DNA. So not all carcinogens are mutagens and not all mutagens are carcinogens. However, there is a broad area of overlap. They are not the same thing, however. They have two different definitions. And finally, the last one I hear tossed around and kind of interchanged with the other two is a teratogen. Now, teratogens are substances that cause birth defects. Now again, teratogens may be mutagenic, but not all are, and not all mutagens are teratogenic, so not all things that cause changes in your DNA will cause birth defect. And teratogens are generally classified as substances that affect the mother, so like are ingested by the mother. A very famous one was a anti-nausea pill that was produced to reduce nausea in pregnant women. You may be familiar with thalidomide, which is the most famous teratogen. It was marketed as a medication for early pregnancies, and it wasn't found until years later that almost all of the fetuses that were born from the mother taking this medicine had some serious birth defects. There was a whole lot of news coverage, there were a whole lot of lawsuits. It was not good, but it was a teratogen, a chemical that caused massive birth defects in the developing fetuses. Other teratogens include things like alcohol and hard drugs, as well as some infections like toxoplasmosis, which is why pregnant women should avoid cleaning cat litter. So again, there is an overlap between some mutagens and some teratogens, but not all teratogens are mutagens, and not all mutagens are teratogens. And it does have a slightly smaller overlap, than between carcinogens and mutagens. There's quite a few more carcinogens that we know of than teratogens. This is just clarifying some differences between the three terms that I often see tossed around and used interchangeably when they may or may not be used in the correct context. So basically, these are three different terms that have three different meanings. They can overlap quite a bit, but just know that they are definitely three distinct terms.